Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who is watching. My name is Betty Kibara. I'm a director of Food Initiative, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Africa Regional Office. Welcome everyone to this session on Africa's solution towards safe and nutritious foods for all. Please note that this event is recorded, and by participating, you are showing your willingness to be recorded. We invite you to use the chat function to put any questions or comments that you may have. We have measures in place to help maintain the integrity of this call. And should there be any disturbance, please bear with us as we'll restore order shortly. This year, the AGRF theme is Pathways to Recovery and Resilient Food Systems. Globally, 3 billion people cannot access healthier diets due to high cost of healthier diets, persistent high levels of poverty, income inequality. The current African food system are failing to deliver the healthier diets for all, with disastrous effects for health systems and human potential. Increasing the availability of and access to nutritious foods must be therefore a key component of a stronger effort to achieve the 2030 targets for hunger and malnutrition. And although nutrition targets are far from being met, we want to acknowledge that some African countries are working towards improving access to healthier diets. In addition, there are promising innovations underway in the private sector to produce and make available more nutritious foods to the general African public. What is this session therefore about? This session therefore seeks to identify innovations, strategies that are helping Africa to improve the availability, accessibility, affordability, and desirability of nutrient-rich food that is sustainably produced. And we really want to emphasize the importance of sustainable production. In addition, this session is going to look at some of the mechanisms for scaling up successful innovations and strategies that are going to be shared by our excellent panel who are here with us today. To address this topic is an eminent person on nutrition who will set the scene for a detailed panel discussion that will come later. The keynote address will be delivered by Mrs. Nan Annan, a board member and a nutrition advocate for Kofi Annan Foundation. Nan is a Swedish lawyer and a painter. After working as an assistant judge at the Administrative and Physical Court of Appeal in Stockholm, she joined the office of the UN High Commission for Refugees in Geneva in 1981. She married the late UN Secretary General Kofi Annan in 1984. And during his time as the Secretary General, she focused on programs relating to people with HIV/AIDS, on girls' education, and women empowerment. Currently, she focuses on nutrition issues. Nan, you are welcome to join the session, and we look forward to your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Betty. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates and guests. It's a great privilege to be with you today for this innovative and forward-looking session. Our goal is to find solutions to one of the world's most pressing problems, safe and nutritious food for all. The 2021 report, State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World, notes that compared with 2019, about 46 million more people in Africa were affected by hunger in 2020, with a further staggering effects to nutrition security. The high cost of healthy diets and persistently high levels of poverty and income inequality continue to keep healthy diets out of reach for around 3 billion people globally. The world is right now experiencing multiple shocks, highlighting the vulnerability of our food systems and their resilience. In Africa and beyond, the COVID-19 pandemic is reducing access and affordability of healthy diets further, likely causing millions of more wasted and stunted children. And let us not forget that behind these numbers, there's a tragedy of a child not reaching his or her full potential, therefore nor his or her country. Beside COVID-19, we're seeing the impact of climate change. Think of the looming famine in Madagascar and the locust invasions that decimated crops in the Horn and Eastern Africa. There are also the effects of conflicts in the Sahel region, Ethiopia, the DRC, and in other countries. These shocks will see more people fall into poverty and increase hunger and malnutrition. In addition, with the rapid growth of diet-related diseases, more low and middle-income countries are facing a double burden of disease, such as diabetes and cardiovascular disease, adding to the health problems related to undernutrition. Ladies and gentlemen, although nutrition targets are far from being met, there are some promising developments underway to improve access to healthy diets. Recently, with leadership by the African Union, African countries have forged a common voice to present game-changing solutions for transforming food systems. Within multi-stakeholder dialogues that are informing the UN Food System Summit later this month, African countries are seeking to leverage solutions that are already available, affordable, and desirable. To put these solutions into action, the first meeting of the proposed Coalition of Action for Healthy Diets from Sustainable Food Systems for children, families, and all took place in August. The discussions focused on providing a platform to share and exchange information on emerging national, regional, and global priorities, on possible food system transition pathways, on Africa's specific needs and priorities, mindful of the continent's wide diversity in socio-economic and environmental ecosystems, and on the interest in supporting a potential coalition on healthy and sustainable diets for all, and identifying potential areas of collaboration. This effort will certainly help set a path towards building greater resilience into our food systems for healthy diets. We also need to identify and leverage entry points for systemic changes, and this must include us answering questions such as, how can we accelerate the adoption of more nutritious and sustainable agricultural technologies for those living in poor and vulnerable areas? What are suitable and affordable delivery mechanisms and solutions for nutritious food? Where do we put the least effort for the most benefit to make nutrition available, accessible, and affordable? Who are the missing actors in the current conversations? And where can we source funding for these interventions? Dear friends, we urgently need to identify implementable solutions and issue a call to action to ensure that sustainable, nutrient-rich foods are available, accessible, and affordable for all. This will not be achieved in a day, a week, or even a year. This process will stand on the shoulders of previous successful responses by Africans for Africans, with the support of global partners from across sectors. It will contribute towards my husband Kofi Annan's vision of a prosperous and food and nutrition secure African continent, for which he worked so hard as UN Secretary General and later at the helm of AGRA and the Kofi Annan Foundation. We need to build on these efforts and work together to accelerate the implementation of these solutions. Our pathways to recovery must therefore consider the drivers, activities, outcomes, trade-offs, and synergies that will leave no one behind, encompass sustainability, and provide healthy diets. With our partners working in the private sector, today's discussion will identify promising agriculture and food policies that can be scaled up to support healthy diets with appropriate budgets, discuss the challenges and opportunities of accessing nutritious food with technologies such as staple crop Bio-Fortification at the smallholder farmer level, industrial fortification at the food processing level, and supplementation. Consider the barriers and necessary interventions to make healthy foods affordable and desirable, and call on advocates and communication actors to support the private and public sector to inform consumers about healthy diet options without being prescriptive. We clearly have an ambitious agenda ahead of us, but your commitment and contribution are crucial on the road to deliver healthy diets to all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nan. And you have highlighted to us the challenges, including famine, locust, and all the others that you've highlighted. You have also assured us that there is a common voice from Africa, and I think that's very exciting. And you've also challenged us that we need to answer some of those questions, and I'm happy that this moderated session is going to answer some of the questions that you put forward. Now, just back to you again. We acknowledge your efforts in implementing the vision of the late Kofi Annan. You have been a long-term advocate for the orange-fleshed sweet potato. How can we build resilience using foods that are consumed every day and that are also culturally appropriate and nutrient dense? Maybe perhaps giving some of your examples of the work that you're doing. Over to you, Nan.
Thank you, Betty. It's exciting to know that bio-fortified crops are being grown by millions of smallholder farming families in many African countries, thanks to the efforts of Harvard Plus, GAIN, and many other partners. And I hope you're all here. Early on, my husband and I were intrigued by the potential of the bio-fortified orange-fleshed sweet potato, with its high beta-carotene content, dietary fiber, and micronutrients. 3 scientists, all based in Africa, 2 Africans actually, won the 2016 World Food Prize for the breeding efforts on this beneficial crop, which is conventionally bred, not genetically modified, I want to point out. And there are ongoing breeding efforts to ensure that the taste and texture fit the local palate perfectly. It can be easily used in local dishes, making them both delicious and nutritious. My husband and I attended several multi-stakeholder meetings in Ghana, enjoying the various dishes. In addition, it can replace expensive imported wheat by up to 50% in bread. And you can easily make other products in the value chain, such as chips and biscuits, and the local gari in Ghana. It's also climate smart with a short harvest time of 3 to 4 months and its ability to grow in marginalized soil. You see, your question set me going. And I'm quite excited that it's now an ongoing project in Ghana, supported by AGRF, to scale up this nutritious crop and develop the whole value chain to improve health and wealth in Ghana. And we at the Kofi Annan Foundation are fully involved in this effort, and what could be a better commitment to safe and nutritious food for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So do you plan to expand to other countries, or you're just working in Ghana?
Well, right now, this project is in Ghana, but I know that it also already is in other countries, such as Ethiopia. I was there for a meeting with the elders, and they were able to present their efforts there, and Mozambique, and yes, I think there are, and Rwanda. So there are much potential.
All right, so thank you so much. Thank you so much for making a strong case for the sweet potatoes, and especially what I like, you're bringing in the climate resilience angle, that this is a short-term crop. It takes about 4 months. I think that's very exciting, and thank you so much. So the next session is going to be a moderated panel, and we now want to welcome our 6 experts for this panel, and we want to start. I see here we have one gentleman, so we're not going to say ladies first this time. We'll say the gentleman first. So our first panelist is going to be Larry Umna, who is the regional director for TechnoServe in West Africa. Larry previously served as the first regional representative for Africa and country director Nigeria for the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition GAIN. He has spent over 2 decades promoting the concept of food fortification and infants, young children nutrition to the food industry, governments, and other stakeholders. Larry, I will start by quoting some words from the late Steve Jobs, that innovation is the only way to win. And so Larry, from where you sit, what are the technical innovations or game-changing solutions that we can leverage on to scale production in perhaps maybe even processing of diverse, safe, and healthier foods? Larry, over to you.
Thank you so much, Betty, and thank you for inviting me to join this distinguished panel. By game-changing solutions, I have no doubts that you are referring to innovations that are transformative and that are impactful. If we take a critical look at the entire food supply chain, from inputs to production to post-harvest losses, processing, distribution, and retail, we would find some innovations, quite a few innovations. I will, however, focus on 3 innovations that have truly made a difference, and that I believe still has some potential to contribute to Africa's consistent search for safe and nutritious food for all. The first one is Bio-Fortification, and Mrs. Anand also spoke to that. Bio-Fortification, in my mind, remains a game-changing solution. The addition of micronutrients to crops certainly provides an opportunity for 1.2 billion Africans to have safe, affordable, nutritious foods. And we know that Harvest Plus has done an amazing job in the last decade on this issue. GAIN is helping with the commercialization of biofortified crops, products, but we all need to join them to take biofortification to a different level, especially if we want to maximize this innovative nutrition, this nutrition opportunity that this solution brings. But it cannot be business as usual. The second innovation that comes to my mind is the work that has been done around reducing food losses. We know that reducing post-harvest losses of nutritious crops could contribute to the availability of affordable, healthier diets all year round, and at the same time contribute to increasing incomes for smallholder farmers. A typical example will be in tomatoes. Tomatoes, we know, for example, in Nigeria, accounts for about 20% of Nigerians' daily fruit and vegetable consumption. And the country has the second largest tomato production volume in Africa, producing over 10% of Africa's total tomato volume. And so even though we have an estimated 200,000 Nigerian farmers growing over 2.3 million tons of tomatoes every year, sadly, we lose about 45% of those harvests is lost before it reaches the market, while the remaining is subjected to significant downward pressure on price due to common gluts in the market, and of course, the perishable nature of the commodity. The YieldWise project, which was a project implemented by TechnoServe, funded by the Rockefeller Foundation in Nigeria, revealed that investments in innovations in the tomato value chain, investments such as cottage processing, especially when they involve women processors, the use of returnable plastic crates, the use of cold chain storage, these innovations resulted in significant reduction in post-harvest losses, 53% reduction in post-harvest losses in the 3-year period when this project was being implemented, which is very significant. The last innovation I want to talk about is large-scale food fortification, which is the addition of micronutrients to staple foods, especially staple foods that are processed industrially and consumed by millions of Africans. Now, it seems pretty straightforward and easy, but that has not been the case. We've had serious challenges with compliance and enforcement. And so between late 2016 and 2020, TechnoServe, with support from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, implemented the Strengthening African Processors of Fortified Foods project in Kenya, Tanzania, and Nigeria, and focused on providing technical assistance to food processors, including the use of data to monitor and ensure effective food fortification. I'm delighted to state that by December 2020, Compliance with flour and sugar fortification in Nigeria, for example, grew from 56% to 94%. In Kenya, compliance for maize flour fortification from 28% to 50%. In Tanzania, edible oil fortification, the compliance grew from 44% to 88%. What does this mean? It means that within 3 years, we have been able to get over 4 million metric tons of adequately fortified foods. Emphasis is on adequately fortified foods was added to the market and reaching an estimated 274 million people in these 3 countries. Lots of work, we still have lots of work ahead despite these achievements. I always say that food fortification is a journey, not a destination. And next week, we would have an industry-led initiative called the Micronutrient Fortification Index, will be launched here in Nigeria. MFI self-assessment tool processors to self-regulate themselves, enhance compliance on food fortification standards, and strive to be on top of the index, which of course is an indication of their commitment to delivering healthy foods to their respective consumers. Let me stop there.
Thanks, Larry. And we take note of the 3 big bets that you talked about: biofortification, post-harvest reduction, and value chain management. And then fortification, very, very exciting, 4 million metric tons of adequately fortified food. So this is round 1. I know we have more questions. I would want to deep dive a little bit into some of those innovations that you've talked about, and thank you so much. So I want to give this time to my second panelist. My second panelist is Patience Mukweza, Operational Executive, Food Solution, a subsidiary of Beams and Ray Packaging in Zimbabwe. And she was previously Research and Development Manager at Keynes Food. She has over 20 years experience in produce processing industry and actively involved in awareness, increasing awareness and adoption of consumption of bio-fortified crops in Zimbabwe. So Patience, I love African proverbs, and especially this one from your country that says, you cannot tell a hungry child that you gave him food yesterday. Year-round accessibility to sustainable healthy diet means that all consumers can obtain the range of nutrients-rich food needed to maintain an active, healthy life. How can we make sustainable, healthy diets accessible to all year-round? Over to you, Patience. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Betty. I fully appreciate the honor to be speaking at such a high forum. Yes, you cannot tell a hungry child that you ate yesterday. That's what we say in Zim. And straight into the question, how do we make a nutritious food accessible to all at all times? In my over 20 years of experience in agro-processing industry, I think we need to pay attention to the following if we are going to make healthy diets accessible to all and at all times. Number 1, at policy level, we need to keep an eye on the balance between growing preference by the farmers on non-cash food crops and food crops. So non-cash crops and food crops. So farmers tend to migrate for purposes of income generation to those crops that are incentivized. So as we make policies, let's make sure we keep an eye so that we spare or we increase our policies to promote or increase food production. So let's keep an eye on the balance between non-food crops and food crops in terms of farmer growing preferences. Number 2, I think we also need to consider developing commercial secondary line uses. I like the work that GAIN is doing, commercializing biofortified crops. As long as there is no secondary use for the crops that are grown by the farmers every day, what then happens is they reduce the tonnage and they lose most of it. The previous speaker spoke about post-harvest losses. But if there's a secondary use for those lines, when we now develop products that make use of the everyday crops that we grow, I like the talk on sweet potato, the orange fleshed. So once we start making formulations that make use of those crops and we commercialize them, it means whatever the farmers are growing, it can be available post-harvest. They are not going to lose it during the peak time due to harvest excess losses that happen because there is no technology investment into that particular area. And then the third thing that I think we need to focus on is investing in developing and commercializing product formulations that speak to the acquired palate of the African continent. As long as our foods don't speak to our cultural and our food preferences, nutritious foods will not be available. People then tend to shun what we locally grow, and that's what's available. We spoke about sweet orange potato, there's orange maize. As long as we don't develop acceptable formulations around that, I will speak about baked beans, for example. Baked beans is a very good product, but it doesn't speak to the African palate in terms of the way we consume beans. In the African context, beans is consumed as a relish, not as a breakfast condiment. So we now need to make sure we innovate around the crops that are grown at household level so that we stimulate consumption, we stimulate adoption, and make them available as an option of nutritious foods, especially to our youth and to our young children. We spoke about bread and wheat. Whilst bread is quite a big business in Africa, you realize that there are families that will have to look for money to buy bread. Yet we've got sweet potato and bananas, for example, that we can then use and innovate products around that will serve exactly the same purpose as bread. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is to develop cost-effective technologies to reduce post-harvest losses, adaptable to small-scale farmers, such as sun drying. We lose a lot of what our farmers produce due to post-harvest losses, making nutritious food non-available. Biowaxing is an option. The previous speaker spoke about tomatoes. Yes, we have got lots of fresh produce that is produced by our small-scale farmers that we lose. So such technologies should not be left as the preview of the commercial or the big industries only. We should reduce such technologies to the level of the small-scale farmers so that they are able to biowax, they are able to vacuum pack and hermetic seal their crops so that these crops can be availed even post-harvest season. In my last few years, I've been investing a lot and studying the possibility of using flexible packaging to pre-cook beans, those crops that take longer to cook, and as such they are shunned by our populations, but yet they are grown every day. It actually gives us a 30% saving when you compare to canning, for example. So it's availing such technologies to the grassroots and making sure our farmers have got access to such technologies and they utilize them even at small scale. So in my opinion, if we pay attention to those four, it can spare us to ensuring that healthy diets are accessible by all and at all times, wherever food is grown in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I don't want to go over your points, but I think what caught my eye was, we want to promote food that speak to Africans. And I think that's, we are going to come back to you on a question of desirability. And thank you so much. You've also highlighted the importance of technology. And I also see something which is cross-cutting. I am beginning to see a pattern here on bio-fortification and post-harvest losses and processing and packaging. That's very, very interesting. So our third speaker is going to be Dorothy Nakimbugwe. Is a director, Nutriel Limited, and associate professor, Department of Food Technology and Nutrition at Makerere University in Uganda. Dorothy has made a significant contribution to introducing and promoting locally processed nutritious foods, including the common beans, the grain amaranth, the insects as alternative proteins for food and feed in Uganda. She has also partnered in pioneering efforts to introduce innovative instant complementary foods in the informal settlement. I really like that, Dorothy, and I hope you can tell us more about it. And currently, she's pioneering efforts to introduce nutritious wheat flour to the street food vendors for what we call flatbread or chapati and other snacks. So, Dorothy, Nelson Mandela once said, freedom is meaningless if people cannot put food in their stomachs. As a key limiting access to food is the cost of food, especially for the healthier diets. Dorothy, what are the most effective solutions of lowering costs of healthy diets? And how can these solutions be leveraged in a complementary way? I do believe you're already doing some interesting work, and we look forward to hearing your insights. Thank you. And over to you, Dorothy.
Thank you very much, Betty, for the introduction, and hello, everybody. It's a privilege to be here. It is this, like the saying you referred to of Nelson Mandela, food is about freedom, and it is this persistent lack of nutritious food for our people that drives me into my dual role. My role at the university, which is my regular job that earns me an income, which then I spend on Nutriel. It's a balanced equation, right? But on a more serious note, those two roles are very complementary, and they're driven by my desire to see research findings proceed all the way to impact in our communities. In my over 20 years experience as a researcher in food and nutrition at Makerere University, and an additional 10 as founding director of Nutriel Limited, I have found the following as potential to have potential to avail nutritious food and to lower the cost of that food. Number one, overall, and it has been mentioned by Larry and also by the next speaker, Patience, we have to become more efficient all along the value chain to identify those bottlenecks, those leakages that are causing both qualitative and quantitative losses of food. Because by so doing, then we avail more food is available, and it is of better quality, and then it becomes a lot more affordable. More specifically, we identified the following. Number one, and it has also been mentioned by Larry, I think, supporting farmers to become more efficient at production. Most of the crops that are grown in Africa, the production in Africa is 50% below genetic potential. So the productivity is too, we lose a lot of at that point, both in terms of the quantity and the quality. And that means that there is less to sell, less income, and the cycle just continues. So also, by supporting farmers to improve the quality, especially of the produce, it reduces the costs of processing downstream. Our experience is sometimes the grain is so dirty, not only do you have to sort and grade it, but we have to wash it and re-dry it, and all that is cost, which translates into the prices of foods. So by supporting primary production and primary processing at farmer level, we can achieve a lot in that area. Secondly, shortening food supply chains, either by connecting farmers directly to sustainable buyers, sustainable markets. This could be industry, but they could also be organizations that buy in bulk. This is very important because then farmers have an assured market. It's one of the biggest constraints of farmers. For the low productivity they have, they also have problems accessing sustainable markets. So in Nutriel's experience, we have worked with amaranth farmers for over 10 years. And we have come to a point where we can actually plan with the farmers and say, this season, you may plant so many acres of amaranth because you will need so many tons of amaranth. And that improves efficiency so that farmers can commit their efforts to something that they know has a ready market. Thirdly, using locally sourced raw materials. This relates to supporting farmers, but also shortening supply chains. Nutriel uses a whole range of grains like maize, pulses like beans and soybeans, even pseudo cereals like amaranth, roots and tubers like cassava. And all these are coming from farmers. And that means that we are putting incomes in the farmers' pockets. And that income is then available to purchase and other requirements, including food products. Animal food consumption in Africa is still below the recommended Food and Agriculture Organization levels. So it is important that farmers have incomes to access such foods. Finally, using innovative processing and packaging, and Patience alluded to that. The fact is, nutritious food cannot be cheap, because cheap is often associated with poor quality, and people don't want poor quality. But what we can do is to innovatively combine, even in processed foods, the way that WHO recommends a varied diet. We also take that principle into processing, and by combining a number of foods from different food groups, we can come up with foods that are well balanced nutritionally. So that takes innovation, that takes into processing the locally available foods. But also, in addition, we look at innovative packaging. Affordability is about presenting the processed foods in quantities that fit into the budgets of the target communities. Nutril, for instance, packages all sorts of products, snacks, instant porridge flours, seasonings and sauces that are pre-processed into small 50-gram packs. Those can be sold anywhere. We have introduced them into informal settlements in the slums of Kampala City. And because it is within the affordability, the income levels of the target communities, they're able to purchase them, and they actually like the fact that somebody is thinking about them and bringing high quality foods that are otherwise into the supermarkets where they don't go to shop. So also the other innovation is looking at lowering the cost and the time for food preparation, making foods more convenient. So we have bean sauce flour that cooks in 10 minutes, and that compared to the usually 1 to 3 hours that is needed to cook beans. We also, the complementary composite flours that we have produced are very convenient for mothers, because all they have to do is to mix it in hot water, and this reduces the required time and fuel. We know that one of the hindrances to proper infant and child feeding is limited time and fuel for mothers to prepare frequent meals for their children. So such solutions are quite important for meeting the nutrition goals. How do we leverage?
Yes, you have 1 minute, Dorothy. I don't want to cut you, but I know we do have another session where I'll be sharing some questions. Do you want to go ahead, or you want to respond in the next round?
Let me just make one point on how we can leverage these benefits. I want to suggest that we need to focus on nutrition for women of reproductive age and children. At the moment, there is a tendency for us to work therapeutically rather than preventively. So there is quite a bit of investment that goes into therapeutic foods, but we could reverse that and instead focus on complementary foods that prevent malnutrition.
All right, thanks so much, Dorothy. And I think, Dorothy, thank you so much. You have, I think I captured a few of your points, but specifically around efficient supply chains, and then packaging, ready to eat. And I really like the beans which cook in 10 minutes. I hope in the next session you can tell us a little bit more about those. And also not just focusing on other adults, but also focusing on women and of reproductive age. I think that's very exciting. Thank you so much, Dorothy. And now I'm going to move to my fourth panelist, who is Ms. Tei Mukunya Oundo, Chief Executive Officer at Naturelok in Kenya. She is the CEO and the founder of Naturelok Kenya, a company that specializes in production and marketing of naturally dried food products. NatureLock also fights food waste throughout Africa by preserving fresh produce naturally into tasty, nutritious, and affordable foods for all, and right at the source. She has inspired many upcoming entrepreneurs as a champion of good health and nutrition, which is expressed by the choice of products that her company profiles. So over to you, Tay. And just before I share with you your question, I am also inspired by the wisdom of one of the African heroine, that is Professor Wangari Maathai, who once said that it is important to nurture any new ideas and initiatives which can make a difference in Africa. So Tay, what are some of the appropriate incentives that could persuade, and here by persuade, I'm putting it in quotes, commercial food companies and retailers to focus on marketing sustainable, healthier foods? Thank you. And
thank you very much. Yeah, thank you so much, Betty. It's an honor to be on this panel today. I'm excited to be here. And this is a really interesting question and topic. And it's close to my heart because I've been working on food drying for the last 15 years, first at Azuri Health and now at NatureLock. And I just want to say a little bit about NatureLock, which sets the background to what to answer the question on convincing or persuading corporates to get into this space. NatureLock, we set it up in January as a Kenyan-Dutch partnership. And what happens at NatureLock is like, it is like no other preservation method. With my experience in drying, this is different and it's unique. What we do is gently process by drying 100% field fresh produce, and we convert them into an affordable, nutritious products. So what we do, we use kitchen style pre-cooking, where we first create a delicious meal, and then we gently dehydrate it, and then it is dried, and it's a dried product that has an oxygen barrier to it, then it is able to be preserved. And what we do is that we're able to retain essential nutrients and natural colors and the aromas for up to 2 years. So that means our products are 100% natural and free from preservatives or additives. And so what we have, for example, I'd really like to show our flagship product. It's a stews day. I can show you it on my screen. It's a green gram stew, which was launched July this year. It's our flagship. And it was launched in the high density areas in Nairobi. So Eastlands, Kawangware, some of those areas. And because it costs 30 shillings or 30 cents a portion, then it is affordable and nutritious for the community. So it looks like a breakfast cereal. What you do, you add boiling water and cover for 3 minutes, and then you have your stew. So you just grab a chapati or pour it over some rice, and you have your meal for 30 to 40 shillings. So what I'd say sets us apart with this technology is that our R&D choices take into account the high food loss ingredients as a priority. So for example, we use tomatoes, onions, carrots into our recipes, and then design end products that are nutritional, tasty, which is critical, and they're affordable as an end product. And then the second thing that sets us apart is our ability to scale down our drying technology so that it can be used by smallholder farmer communities, and meaning that we meet them where they are. So we talk about drying at source, and then we focus on value addition, preservation, and creation of products. So when we come to the question on appropriate incentives that would persuade commercial food companies, I'd reframe the question by asking who does the persuasion? Who does the persuasion? And what do the incentives look like? And there's been quite a discussion around technology and value addition. What I'd say is, coming from a marketing background, the consumer is king. So we need to start off with a cultural change where we look at influencing, persuading the consumers to want and like healthy eating as a lifestyle. And where I'd say then the influence would come strongly as backup would be from the government, from NGOs, also joining in the fray to create awareness on campaigns and healthier eating. So we can find big billboards alongside KFC where we are saying that, yes, we can eat fried chicken, but also there's good nutritious food that is alongside a big sweet potato billboard that will start educating the consumers on what is the alternative to good eating and healthy living. So for example, if you take country like Netherlands, where dairy is so major and the farmers are promoted a lot on the dairy sector, marketing is done by eating ice cream, take yogurt, eat cheese. So that is something, a drive that is universal and driven by the government. Then if we take retailers and food companies and challenge them to take their societal responsibilities, then what happens is that then we as food companies will market proudly natural foods and create that familiarity again and acceptance to the consumer. And then also in addition, if we develop ways of reporting societal benefits, like being part of the B Corp impact assessment, using those tools, or looking at what Kenya Bureau of Standards now are enforcing, that food companies should have HACCP as a basic. That means then we're looking at societal benefits on food safety, food fortification, having traditional African foods on our menus. So being proud about what a natural does for us. And then technology and SMEs has been talked about, and I love that, because then SMEs can persuade larger companies to have innovations that also match their sustainability and healthy goals. So for example, what we're doing is having potential cooperations with larger cooperatives where, not cooperatives, companies, where we are looking at co-creating recipes. And when we co-create these recipes, they fit into their portfolios, but then for us, it increases the impact on health and sustainability for small-scale farmers. And SMEs could also just spur competition towards affordable and nutritious products, just like what Dorothy is doing. So it creates a challenge and an aha moment for many companies. And what I'd say also is government incentives. The government needs to, taxation, lower taxes and lower barriers to trade on healthy products, so that it is much easier to access good quality, healthy products rather than those that are not. And things like school feeding programs, put some wind behind initiatives. For example, I came across Food for Education, who are feeding, cooking food for the communities, for schools, and they're reaching 30,000 children already. So if we are able to have synergies around that, then we can feed more with healthy food. So these are some of the ways that as a whole, we can sit at the table as SMEs and commercial food companies and contribute to this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Tay. And I must say, I have had the opportunity of visiting your company when you're doing your launch, and I tasted the Tuesday. I must say it's very innovative, because if you think about it, if you have to, boil pulses, it takes maybe something like 2 hours. So I no longer need to boil the pulses. I only need to come to Tuesdays. I'm in your company and I can buy Tuesday, and all I need to add is hot water. I think that's quite exciting. And in terms of affordability, you did talk about that small packet being 0.3 cents of a dollar. And I think I want to also acknowledge what you talked about, the different roles, and especially how do we also see how we can begin to influence the school feeding programs. And we are happy that you're aware about the Food for Education and what they are doing. And I hope potentially maybe your product could be sold through schools. But I also want to challenge you also. You talked about wanting to see a billboard that has, did you see a sweet potato? I think that's a challenge for all. Every other time when you're driving, you only see billboards for the fast foods, but it's an opportunity for us to also start raising awareness on good foods. And we hope to see your billboard very soon, Tay. So, my fifth panelist, Isabel, I know you have been waiting. Isabel Dimitrov is Manager, Corporate Responsibility and Community Engagement Lead for Europe, Middle East, and Africa at Cargill. Isabel is part of Cargill's Corporate Responsibility team for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, and has over a decade of experience fostering private sector collaboration for sustainable development. She is passionate about private sector collaboration for sustainable development, inclusive business models, and corporate community investments program that maximizes on employees' engagement. She also works closely with Heifer International on Hatching Hope Kenya, and which is a partnership, a joint initiative between the two organizations. This is Cargill's first partnership around a shared value business model approach to empowering smallholder farmers in the poultry value chain. And I hope, Isabel, you're going to share a little bit about that. This being your first partnership, we are very excited to hear more about it. But before I go to your question, I want just to reflect for a couple of minutes. Just 2 days ago, the African Agriculture Status Report was released at AGRF. And a key highlight is the consumption patterns of Africa. For example, the diets of West African consumers, and I do believe this is very similar to the rest of Africa, are predominantly based on staples, which currently provide about 70% of the calories. So to you, Isabel, how can the local supply chains be diversified and strengthened to build a nutrition resilience in the African food system? Over to you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Betty, for the introduction. And it's a pleasure to be part of the panel today and to be connected with the distinguished panelists. I've already got some great thoughts and ideas based on the remarks that you've already shared. First of all, a little bit about Cargill. We are a private sector company, and we bring food, agriculture, financial, and industrial products to people who need them all over the world. We have over 155,000 employees in 70 countries working every day to nourish the world in a safe, responsible, sustainable way. So with that footprint, we also have a very big responsibility. And what I wanted to share with you more today, which Betty alluded to, was a bit more around our program called Hatching Hope. Because I think it's a good sort of response in terms of how we answer this broader question to the panel on transforming food systems in Africa to ensure sustainable, healthy diets. And I also wanted to zoom in specifically, as Betty said, around what we're doing through our Hatching Hope program and strengthening local supply chains to build nutrition resilience. So we started Hatching Hope with Heifer International to improve the nutrition and livelihoods of 100 million people around the world through the production, promotion, and consumption of poultry. And this goal is set for it to achieve by 2030. So it's certainly an ambitious goal, but we believe in the power of poultry to provide income quickly, to engage women and youth in particular, and to improve nutritional outcomes through the increased consumption of poultry and eggs. Now, what I wanted to share with you today was a little bit more of some of the learnings and the results we have so far from our project in Kenya. As Betty mentioned, it is one of the first programs we are working on as Cargill, where it's truly embedded into our business model. So our animal nutrition and health business, as Cargill, is closely involved in providing technical expertise and support. As many of us might be aware, there is certainly an increasing demand for poultry in Kenya. And so our hope with this project was, how can we harness that increased demand, but ensure that it's in a sustainable, accessible way that ensures a quite fragmented value chain today can be strengthened and more resilient, and can ultimately contribute to both nutrition and livelihoods outcomes. So in Kenya in particular, our goal is around improving the nutrition and livelihoods of 10 million people by 2022. We're midway through the program so far. And I think one key learning we've had is to achieve such an ambitious goal, a holistic approach and multi-stakeholder collaboration have been critical. And we've worked on engaging all of the key value chain actors within poultry, whether that be farmers, farmer producer organizations, feed millers, chick providers, off-takers, county governments and related extension services, schools, financial institutions, and many more. And I think what we've learned is helped contribute to the success of the program is taking a very holistic systems approach through three pathways that inform both the program in Kenya, but also our global efforts in other countries. Ultimately, these three pathways each, we hope, complement each other to achieve improved nutritional status of households. So the first pathway we focus on is on improved livelihoods, first of all. So that's really where, particularly with Heifer International's expertise, we work on the Hatching Hope target farmers and the households in a variety of counties in Kenya to support improved productivity outcomes. So ultimately, by providing that training, that community development, we can support the increased income for these farmers, enhance their resilience and ability to cope with shocks to the system, and then also improving their consumption of poultry and eggs through actually producing it as well. The second piece, or second pathway, if you will, is around wider nutrition education. And a large part of our goal of reaching 10 million people is actually through this pathway too. So whether that be working with the households that we're targeting already, those 40,000 households, or also reaching people through mass channels, for example, through radio, digital media, through creating more awareness in school programming as well on the overall, importance of protein and where, poultry and eggs can come into the equation. And then the third pathway is around the product, services, and markets access and being able to improve a farmer-focused shift within this area. And I think Dorothy highlighted really well. So really understanding how are we supporting that sustainable market access for those farmers. So really that supply and demand have to come in parallel, which ultimately we hope will result in improved income and availability of protein. So those three areas come together: increased access to poultry, increased consumption of diverse foods, and increased consumption of poultry and related products like eggs, to hopefully improve the nutritional status of the households that we're trying to reach. Now, to put this into perspective, I think taking some of the results from our midterm evaluation is quite timely that we just finalized this. So far, what we've seen, and we continue to draw from this midterm evaluation to see how we can improve, to scale, to accelerate progress. So far, we've seen already amongst the targeted households an 8% increase against our baseline in achieving living income for the households that have been targeted by the program. We've also seen a 180% increase in local indigenous chicken reared, and also 75% increase in egg productivity per hen. So that's a really substantial improvements. We've seen a 16% increase in households consuming eggs, and 5% for poultry products themselves. And then in terms of protein consumption for these households, we've seen an improvement from the baseline of 25.1 grams per day to an improvement of 41.5 grams per day. So I think some good early results from our midterm evaluation. But yes, I guess to sort of sum it up, I think the holistic multi-stakeholder approach has been so important for us in Kenya to strengthen the local value chain there for poultry, but we also see how that can extend to wider conversations around improving our food systems overall, and how we can take that holistic and multi-stakeholder approach even further. So thanks very much, Betty. Back over to you.
Thank you so much, and I think your example is just very, very compelling. You're targeting 10 million people, and also looking at the baseline and your evaluation assessment. I think that's very interesting. We have some very powerful indicators in terms of increase in egg productivity, household consumption of eggs, and many others that you've talked about. Because if you look at the way we have structured our food system, I think we focus so much on producing crop, and sometimes we forget the livestock and the poultry, which is very, very important to the household. So thank you so much. We will come back to you with additional questions. And I also want to encourage all the viewers on the line, all the participants, please do ask questions or comments. I already have a few that I'm going to run over in the next couple of minutes. And so our final panelist is Lauren Landis, the representative and country director, the World Food Program Kenya office. She has spent over 36 years working in the field of relief and development. She is an experienced leader and innovator in the field of humanitarian assistance and development. She was previously the director of nutrition at United Nations World Food Program. So I will just start by quoting some words from Kofi Annan. And in his many powerful quotes that he had, he said that knowledge is power, information is liberating. Education is the premise of progress in every society. Lauren, how can we ensure that consumers have access to knowledge and information to make informed dietary choices? Because sometimes we eat what we eat because we don't know. And as you respond to that question, I know you're working a lot as a WFP. You can also share with us how many countries in Africa have and follow the food-based dietary guidelines. So Lauren, over to you, and thank you so much. Your 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and really proud to be part of this really distinguished panel today and really love the discussion. I do have to say, as I get started, that I would like to make sure Mrs. Anand knows that the World Food Program, along with other organizations, is working with the International Potato Institute, and we've got orange flesh sweet potatoes in 6 counties so far. And I'm also a big fan, and in addition to being great for the environment, they are also really baby friendly. Kids love these things, and that really helps to get the nutrition in at an early age when it's so critical. So not only does the World Food Program work with smallholder farmers, but also due to COVID in urban areas. But the message is the same throughout Kenya, that we really need to build systems that deliver a sustainable, healthy diet. And as your question suggests, we need to ensure that people know what they're eating and the impact that the food may have on their health, their well-being, and that of their families. Let me suggest maybe 4 or 5 different ways that we can really get that education across and sensitize people, particularly around the world, but also in Kenya. First and foremost, food labels. They're very, very critical, one of the most powerful tools for consumers. Nutrition labeling is a key policy tool that really brings together government and private sector to guide consumers to make informed choices and healthier eating options, or looking at their options. Kenya, like many countries in Africa, is now contending with an emerging epidemic of diet-related non-communicable diseases, and that makes food labeling all the more critical. So currently, nutrition labeling, in particularly front pack labeling of processed food, is really the best form for empowering consumers to make informed choices. Currently, Kenya really has mostly back of the label processed food details and information, but often that doesn't really provide enough information, and often it's not really looked at by a hurried mother who's buying and running home to make dinner. So we're really encouraging the nutrition sector in Kenya to begin to prioritize the development of a Kenya standard front label, which will inform and ensure the information in a way that consumers can really see it and use it throughout the country, and also with populations that are illiterate or not. The next challenge that comes with that is to really make sure that customers know the importance of reading those labels and are sensitized to what those labels tell them. In other words, how to analyze and evaluate the information that's on there. But it has to be easy to read, and it has to be done in a simple way. I don't take a calculator to the supermarket to figure out how many grams of protein or sugar might be in something. So we have to make it easy. We also have to make it accurate. What is a healthy food? How do we define that? Is it true that if it says it's healthy, it's truly healthy? And what do we mean by that? We also need to consider products, for example, when you're eating out. How do you know what you're eating? Whether you're eating in a small stand or in a big restaurant, you need to have that data with you so that you can also make informed choices. The thing that we really debate about is good labels versus bad labels, and let me explain. Often there are labels that encourage products. There's a seal or there's some sort of particular label that says this is a healthy product. And that healthiness is defined by both government and private sector so that we know it's truly healthy. And you encourage people to look for that label and buy those healthy products. However, there's also the option to have sort of bad food labels, meaning there are warning labels that says this food may be filled with sugar, fat, salt, things that are bad for you. We find in the World Food Program, mostly we go with the good labels, but we have seen around the world that there are many examples of the sort of more warning labels that are also can be effective. We also then need to think about physical exercise, although it's not a nutrition guideline, it is often accompanied countries' different food guidelines, because of course it's a component, it's an important factor. And just like labeling guidelines, it really needs to be focused on the most vulnerable, poor, disadvantaged groups, possibly, but also it has to have a gender lens. We know that women around the world are most likely to be buying the food, preparing the food, but also reading those labels and considering a family diet and nutrition. So it's important to get that right and that women are aware. It's also, we need some tools to get the message out. Community health workers are, of course, a key tool around the world. SMS messaging sometimes is a very effective tool and something that works well in Kenya, where we have a lot of technology, and particularly with youth who are likely to be on their phones and to see those messages and hopefully grow some awareness. These are important tools. So to your final aspect of your question, there are 7 countries in Africa that have food-based dietary guidelines, all of them developed within the last, say, 10, 20 years. Kenya, Sierra Leone, South Africa, Benin, Namibia, Nigeria, and the Seychelles. So a wide breadth of countries, but particularly in countries that are facing SDGs and ones that are either reaching or already in middle income status. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so thanks so much, Lauren, and very, very good insights. And I want to take this opportunity to also engage with our audience. And I would like you to address a question that has been sent to us by Kate Gachanja. And I'm going to read the question. I think it's directed to you, Lauren. I'm always doubting the labels I read on our products in the stores. How do we ensure that the ingredients on the labels are done ethically to guide our nutrition and diets in Kenya? That's a question from Kate, and perhaps maybe just a question from me. It is said that many people in Africa actually don't read the labels. So I think you can also speak to that. When I go to the supermarket, I just look at the flour and just pick your sugar or whatever. Hardly do people really pay attention to those finer details written there. So you can also maybe share with us your insights. Do people really read or they don't read? Thank you.
Thank you. Very quickly on both of those, and I think it was touched on by Gain. I think in order to believe what is actually on the label, you have to believe in the enforcement. In other words, it's a combination of private sector and government needs to check, and you need to know that government's checking and making sure that what's that product claims and what that product actually has in it is actually tested, and and if it doesn't, that product is taken off the market. So food quality and safety, using the expertise of food technologists is really critical. And often you find that the claims are made, but if it's not enforced, then you're going to have problems, and that can really lose the faith of the public. So encouraging, empowering government and private sector to get it right, and then checking is absolutely key. Yeah, not everyone reads the labels. I think there's a whole campaign that needs to be put around to encourage people to read them. But as I was trying to say, the easier you can make it and the more you can put on the front label, even if you're not going to turn around and read the whole label, if you catch the key components, you know, low in salt, or just even a special symbol that says that it is low in sugar or something like that. You may not read the whole label, but you would know which product to grab off the shelf as you're running through the supermarket. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I think that's a good response. Just before we go to the next set of questions, we want to make sure we're also engaging with the participants, and there is a question here for you patients, yeah, so one of the participant has asked, you did mention the bio-fortified maize in Zimbabwe, and you really mentioned this in passing. Can you share a little bit more about the bio-fortification maize in Zimbabwe? Yeah, over to you, Patience.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, Zimbabwe does grow bio-fortified maize, the orange maize. And I worked on one product, I think it was the first in trying to promote adoption of bio-fortification, a product that utilized the orange maize and the high iron bean, called Semp and Bean Mix. You can look for it in the shops under the Cashew Valley brand. So it makes use of the orange maize, and yes, work is ongoing to try and adopt the orange maize, not just as a full commodity, but also as an ingredient, because it has got the natural color, like we've said. So we then try and use it in foods that are consumed by kids. There are projects underway, like in UNAX, so that we can also deliver the same to them. So Semp and Bean Mix utilizes bio-fortified maize. It's a meal in a can. It has got the bean and the Semp done in the way that we traditionally do it in Zimbabwe.
All right, thank you. There is another question which I will let any of the panelists answer. It's coming from Isatu Jero. And the question is, we need more innovations to reduce women's workload, and great to hear one that would lower the cost and the time for food preparation. I do think there were two examples, and maybe anyone who just want to reemphasize on that point of lowering, technologies that lower the cost and the time for preparation. I do think, Tay, you can respond to that, just emphasizing maybe your product and maybe someone else from the team.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that, yes, it is indeed important now to look at convenience, because one of the key factors for consumers, especially in the urban areas now, is convenience. How do I juggle? We're calling them juggling moms. I've got a little business going. I've got children, young children that I've got to feed. I've got to take care of the household. I've got a lot of tasks to perform. So how do I juggle that and have a good meal, a good nutritious meal for my family, and cook it in time before the kids doze off and we've still got homework to do? So there's a lot of things that then convenience addresses. And in addition, there would be the factor of fuel. If we're using charcoal or kerosene in cooking our foods, that takes time, energy, and money. And so those are the solutions that then we're looking at when we're developing products that are good for our juggling mom. So I think that's a good factor to consider as well.
All right, thank you so much. We want to encourage, is there someone else who want to respond? Dorothy, do you want to come in?
Yes, I just want to compliment what Tay has said. This convenience is also very important for infant and young child feeding, because for those that age group, it is recommended that they get at least a minimum of 6 feeds a day. If a mom has to prepare that meal from scratch every time, in fact, they don't do it. They don't have the time and they don't have the fuel to do that. So by preparing complementary foods that are already fully pre-cooked and packaged in that little consumer pack, it is very important because all that a mother has to do is to prepare a flask of hot water and have it all day. Every time they have to feed the child, they just open the pack into a bowl or a cup, mix it up and feed the child. So convenience, yes, very important, but also it impacts adequate feeding for infant and young children, as well as other age groups. If you throw into their school bag, you want to find a consumer-sized pack of a healthy snack, whether it is a bagia or a cookie or whatever it is. And that is where the innovation is going on in some of the SMEs, including Nutrail.
Yeah, so thank you. Patience, have you raised your hand again, or is that a legacy hand? I think it's a legacy. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so we also want to make sure that we're engaging with those who are online. And I want to pick one comment. This is a compliment. Larry, thank you for sharing about the potential for increasing nutrition through the post-harvest losses. The learning from Yieldwise are available at the Rockefeller Foundation Exhibition Hall at AGRF platform. That's from Kagweria. Thank you so much, Kagweria. And then Jane Juguna, you want to inquire, you want to get the contact for Tay. I'll make that happen after this call. And then Vanessa Adams, the Vice President of AGRA, thank you so much for complimenting all of us who are on this call. And I know there's a question about scale, and we are going to come to that. But before we come to the question of scale, I do believe when we started, we said this session is about learning about the innovations which are in the space and how we can scale these innovations. But we did also have a couple of questions about availability, accessibility, affordability, and desirability. So Larry, you have been quiet for quite some time, and I want to take this question to you. I know we do not, maybe you did not finish your proposition, but can you tell us how can we ensure efficient availability of nutritious foods which are sustainably produced? I do think you have additional insights, and then I will ask another question to the next panelist. Thank you. And over to you.
Thank you so much, Betty. I think it's important for us to look at the issue of data. The time has come for us to begin to think about how we operationalize what I call a coordinated food systems data transformation agenda. Government needs data for effective policy development and policy implementation. Tay talked about lowering taxes for nutritious foods. Fantastic ideas, but we need to be able to convince the government with data. Industry executives need data to evaluate the impact of their products. They need data to be able to monitor the impact of their actions and perhaps their inactions as well. And I think those days of voodoo statistics are gone. This is 2021. We need data in a very coordinated way. There's a famous quote from a guy called Lord Edward Deming that says, "In God we trust, others must bring data." So I think this is something we must remember. The second point I also want to raise is about ramping up investment in infrastructure. Investments in infrastructure that would help support critical innovations and opportunities. For example, in cold chain, in proximate processing, setting up processing units to be as close as possible to sources of raw materials. The investment in road network, power utilities, telecoms. Today, e-commerce is big business. UNCTAD, Dr. said in online shopping in Africa has increased by 18% annually in the last 4 years. McKinsey estimates that the e-commerce business in Africa will be 75 billion by 2025. So digital agriculture is here to stay. We already know that supply chains now are being facilitated using digital agriculture and linking farmers to and aggregators to various processors. So investment in that ecosystem, I think, is a very wise one. Lastly, is we need to look at fostering transformative partnership, transformative and smart partnerships that are targeted to increasing access to nutrient-rich foods and building on the competencies of the various actors. We have an example in Nigeria where we've established a CEO forum, a chief executive forum that meets once a year to discuss food fortification and address issues affecting food fortification and the ability of the companies to deliver on their commitment. These are the kind of partnerships we should develop. They should be purposeful and they should be able to deliver measurable impact. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Larry. And I will now go to Lauren. Did you have any additional insights on how we can make sustainable, healthier diets more accessible to all?
Sure, I think it's a really great question. And I think that it's a question that's being asked globally, but something we've been doing a little bit of thinking about in Kenya. And I think where we are on this is that you can't change people's diets overnight. You can't make healthy food accessible and change both affordability, but also access completely and very quickly. So what you really need to do is start small and encourage people to make small, informed choices. For example, diversifying diets. If you live in the arid or semi-arid regions of Kenya and you eat the same diet every single day, you're probably not getting a balanced diet. So what can you change that's still affordable in that diet to give you more nutrients? Today, I heard the example of eggs. Can you add an egg a couple of times a week that might give you that nutrient that you need? Also in Nairobi and urban populations, it may be that you take something away. Maybe sugary beverages have to be just for special occasions and not something that's eaten every day and replaced with, say, fruit juice that might, again, make sure that particularly children are getting all the nutrients they need. Also, access, I think we really need to start with the farmers. Again, nothing new, already presented today. Let's make sure that the farmers know which crops are the most healthy to grow. They've all been mentioned today. We've got to make sure there's a market for them, whether it's orange flesh, sweet potatoes, high iron beans, millet is another one that really comes to mind. So not only encourage them and educate them why to grow it, but help to make sure that there's a market. And that market probably comes through linking those smallholder farmers to the private sector and making sure that those healthy foods are available in all markets. And I love the idea. We have to work on both the supply and demand of healthy foods. So creating that demand for healthy foods, I wish we had that marketing budget of KFC or of Coke, but we could start with those billboards for sweet potatoes. And I think all of those things would hopefully encourage the access to healthy foods. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you so much. I know we don't have too much time, so I will go to Dorothy. And Dorothy, I want to maybe further elaborate. You did share with us some interesting insights, but how can we influence demand and make sustainable, healthier diets desirable for all? And in particular, maybe as you respond to that question, you can link up with a question that has come in from the audience on how can we best inform and engage the young Africans on the importance of nutritious foods. What is the role of schools in fostering education awareness? I mean, nutrition awareness among schools. Maybe that may not be for you, but whoever feels like they can respond, you can respond. So over to you. Talk to us about desirability and how we engage the youth on the issues of nutrition.
Yeah, thank you so much, Betty and everybody. Lauren has said it is very difficult to change habits. It's very difficult to change food habits. So I would suggest that we think about how to make the foods that are already desirable to people more nutritious. Because yeah, it would need a lot more investment. It can happen, but it will need a lot more investment, and that was also touched. I think we do need to make investment in that awareness. When it comes to nutrition and health, I would propose that the investment that goes into that is a public good. But before we get there, we need to look at what is desirable. I'll give an example in Uganda, and I suspect in Kenya as well. Flat bread that is wheat-based is very popular. And of late, they're making chapati, the flat breads. And these are very popular with the young people and the single people, and especially the low-income groups. So the people that are especially vulnerable to malnutrition due to their low incomes and limited knowledge. So then we thought, what is going into this? It is 100% wheat, probably 95% of it imported. So it's not locally produced, it's not sustainable, but it's also just plain, what is it called? Non-fortified, I mean, plain wheat. So what we have done is to say, it is going to be very difficult to convince people not to eat chapati. But we have developed a wheat flour that is enriched with amaranth, and we are busy introducing it to the street vendors, but we're also combining this with an education, first of the street vendors, to tell the difference between the wheat they have been using and how this might be better for their customers. Because once the street vendors are convinced, then they're going to convince their customers. The next people to convince are the retailers from whom the street vendors are buying the wheat they're using in their chapati. So we have this campaign going. It is slow, it is small, but we think that it's a start, and it illustrates the possibility to make diets more nutritious without necessarily in the short term changing people's food habits. The schools have an important role to play in this because those are the formative years for the children. And I think Tay also mentioned it. We need to begin to target the schools with nutritious knowledge about nutritious foods. And it is very interesting that once the kids are convinced, especially where the means are available, the kids are very important for convincing their parents to adopt more nutritious foods. So I think the schools have potential in multiple ways. One, as pathways for transmitting information on the importance of healthy diets, but also as a means of actually getting healthy foods into the diets by incorporating those foods into the school feeding programs and the meals.
Okay, thanks so much, Dorothy. I see, Lauren, your hand is up. You just have a couple of minutes because we need to start beginning to wrap up the session.
No, Dorothy said my point. I'm very, very big on school feeding as a way of getting healthy food into children and nutrition education. So the only thing I would add is fortified rice. You know, it's hiding nutrition in there. It looks just like the exact same thing you normally eat every day, just like the chapatis, which I love. So it's finding ways to get the nutrition in there without people really even noticing.
Thank you so much. I think fortified rice should also be included in school feeding programs. So I know we need to wrap up the session, but I also am cognizant that we have additional questions. So there is a question here. Growing up, I learned basic nutrition in primary and secondary school. These lessons were important in setting the base for my nutrition literacy later in life. Are you seeking to strengthen and expand on this initiative? I don't know who want to respond to that, but I know in the Kenyan system now, they have started the competence-based program, which is also has some components of nutrition, but maybe Lauren or someone else who would want to respond, you can respond to that question, the extent to which we are scaling up nutrition literacy in our schools.
I'll say I agree entirely, and we're definitely working on that as part of the school curriculum. And we feel that it's absolutely critical. The younger you get children to eat healthier, to like their vegetables, it'll last throughout their lifetime. And I think we've seen a lot of strong support from the Ministry of Health and now the Ministry of Education for including those guidelines and standards within the standard curriculum.
All right, before I come to my last question, I think there is an interesting question here from one of the participants, and I'm going to read it. Here are some smallholder farmers that have discovered some good nutritious weeds, that's WEEDS, like blackjack for the past 9 years. How can we talk into such innovation, identifying some of those nutritious and good weeds instead of just weeding them and throwing them away? I don't know whether any of the panelists has a good experience on how you can utilize some of these local materials for food. Does anyone feel confident enough to answer? Larry? Or who is going to answer?
Betty, maybe I could contribute as well. Yeah. Because also, yeah, those weeds are so nutritious. It's absolutely amazing to have them in our diets. And some of the, again, some of the strengths we see in the food business, developing and drying and being able to have these nutritious vegetables on the palate of the consumers is key. And so some of the technologies, like for example, the one that we use to be able to create preservation methods, then allows these nutritious vegetables to come out to the public in affordable ways, because there's processes in drying that will be expensive and not allow for the product to then be consumed by those who need the product, or it strips away the nutritional value from the product itself, so that you lose the purpose of preserving the product. So it is really nice, and yes, we could link up and see what those weeds look like and whether they could be on the palate a nutritious product going forward. So that's excellent.
Yes, so thank you so much. And at this point, what I need to do is this session, we started by saying that we are looking at innovation, but we're also looking at how do you scale this successful innovation. So with just a couple of minutes left, I would like that all the panelists, maybe starting from Nan, if you have any suggestions on how to scale this innovation. You have 1 minute, maybe just tell us what we need to scale or what you need to scale in what you're doing in Ghana. And also any commitments that your organization or your company sees going forward. And literally you have 1 minute for your parting shot. Thank you. So over to you, Lauren. And then after that, I will say the next person.
Okay, 1 minute. I don't have a perfect answer, but I'm gonna scale, is my commitment, scale those orange flesh sweet potatoes, more. Add the high iron beans. And I feel that if it has all the components of making money, good to eat, nutrition, and it's good for the environment, you don't have to do too much. It's like pushing on an open door. Those are the things that scale the most. So my commitment is to continue to promote those.
Thank you so much. I think I now agree this is an orange fleshed sweet potato and high iron beans. I think that's been really a good conversation. So who want to go next? Patience.
It's okay.
Tell us how you scale and also tell us what is the commitment going forward.
Okay, thank you so much. I think from where I'm sitting as Food Solutions, what we want to scale up is the adoption of flexible retort pouch vacuum cooking for the legumes and hard to cook foods that are produced locally. So because they are cost effective, 30% much cheaper to deliver per serving compared to canning, which is the widely adopted. So the commitment is to try and set up an industrial prototype so that industry can be provoked to take up a flexible tote pouch technology. Secondly, is also to make available the waxing technology and the external impregnated bags for packaging and preserving fresh vegetables, so that we reduce post-harvest losses for vegetables grown by the small-scale farmers.
Thank you so much. Very, very good points. Well taken. And I'll go to Isabel.
Sure. Okay. So in 1 minute, I think one of our commitments and also opportunities to scale are to continue to look for opportunities where we can replicate and scale our Hatching Hope program. It was started by Cargill and Heifer International, but we are always looking for additional partners. Cargill has also brought in some of our customers to try to scale in other countries. And I think this goes back a little bit to the point where I mentioned, we shouldn't be afraid of, at least as a private sector company, to see how can we service our smallholder farmer segment better, even if that's not always the, the size and scale of farmers that we're reaching. I think Hatching Hope is proving that actually we're learning so much from this, and we're also able to engage many more value chain actors, which ultimately help improve these nutritional outcomes, because farmers feel a part of that process, whatever size or shape they are. I think another one just to touch on is, Cargill's committed as well to supporting more policy coherence, which we think is important. So one way in which we're doing that is through the private sector mechanism. We've engaged in the Committee on World Food Security's voluntary guidelines on food systems and nutrition. And we think that's important in terms of being able to support that policy coherence, whether it's around food systems and nutrition, health, agriculture, education, environment, gender, social protection, trade, and food safety. All of these policies need to work together in order to incentivize the system in the right way, and so that we won't have those obstacles as we look to scale. Right. So yeah, I'd say that overall. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you so much. We take your points. You would also want to diversify, replicate your diversification program and policy coherence. That's good. Dorothy, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. The question is, how do we scale up successful strategies and innovations? I would say number one is investment. And Tay, I hope you don't mind me saying, but I'm really pleased to see the transformation. I have known Tay and Azuri Health for, for many years in the past. And now, because of investment, look where she is. She's NatureLock, and that is what we need. I would suggest that we, as nations, as organizations, begin to look at preventive nutrition rather than therapeutic sort of approaches. If we scale up nutritious complementary foods that target the most vulnerable, we will prevent malnutrition and the human and financial cost that comes with it. So that is a commitment I have as a researcher, but also as an entrepreneur going forward.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. And I must also acknowledge that, Tay's story has been very, very inspiring. We as the Rockefeller Foundation partnered with Tay in her old outfit, and also supporting her to transition and making that connection with the European investors. So I think you made a very, very good point, that we can even build on the African-based SMEs if what they need is additional investments and technology. I know she didn't talk about it, but behind NatureLock is what you call fibered fresh technology. Tay, you have 1 minute, and so is Larry, because I need to close the session. Over to you, Tay. Your 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Betty, Dorothy. I think championing this is so critical, and that's a commitment also to be an example to what African entrepreneurs and SMEs can do. And for me, I look at it from a perspective of, if we put ourselves in the consumer's shoes, are we producing good products at the right price for our pockets? Are they utilizing well our scarce resource of time? Are they convenient? Are they good for my energy, for my health, for my family? Do they check the box on my conscience, for my environment? If all those boxes are checked for our products, then we produce products that are changing the world. And if a consumer buys it, then they join the process of being a
Thank you, Tay. Thank you. Consumer counts first, Larry, and then Lauren, and then Na, if you have any comments.
Yeah, Betty, we would definitely prioritize the area of scaling up innovations in post-harvest losses. I think that's where we need to put in a lot more energy into. From a commitment point of view, TechnoServe's belief in the power of the private enterprise to transform lives remains very strong. And so we reiterate our commitment to mobilizing leaders from private sector to join hands with government and other actors to create that enabling environment we need for scaling up innovative solutions that guarantees safe and nutritious foods for everybody.
All right. Thank you so much, Larry. Lauren, half a minute. Do you want to add anything? Lauren?
No, you've already gone by me, so I'll save you a half a minute.
That's fine. And then Nan, do you have anything to add?
No, it's wonderful to have heard all of you, and thanks both Lauren and Thea talking about the orange fresh sweet potatoes. This is so important that it's reached so many, and that we get this glowing orange fresh sweet potatoes for the health and wealth of those concerned, that we have a multi-stakeholder project, and
yes,
we're excited to work on this in Ghana. And I see not only a billboard, I could see a sort of a big scale orange fresh sweet potato and selling all this produce that you can, so it gets to be known. And you can make juices out of the green leaves, you can make wonderful, well, in everything. So I will stop there. And we will continue on this work in Ghana.
So, yeah, so thank you so much. And through this session, we have learned a lot. I cannot summarize everything we have learned, but we started looking at the shocks that are there and in Africa. And we also got a proposal that we do have an African coalition of healthier diets for sustainable food system for children. This session also looked at different technological innovations. We did look at Bio-Fortification. We looked at fortification. We also looked at the issues of post-harvest losses, improvement of productivity. We also addressed issues of processing. I think that was very, very well done. And we did also talk about how do you also incentivize consumers to consume healthier diets, and many other things that we have talked about. We also learned about Hatching Hope initiative, and how we need to also diversify so that we're not talking about only about the cereals and grains, but we're also talking about livestock. We've also had very, very interesting conversation about information and data, and thank you so much. We are just about to end the session. And once again, as we began by saying, you cannot tell a hungry child that you gave him food yesterday. Food is a human right, and we owe it to this generation. Thank you so much, all our participants. It's been very, very exciting. We apologize if we're not able to get to all the questions, but I do know that we tried our best to get to all the questions. Asanteni sana. Thank you. I think we can clap for everyone who participated, all our excellent participants, and also the panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, I believe now we are offline.
Okay, so I'm just going to end the meeting now. Thanks everyone for a lovely session. All right, have a good day.
Oh, so we're done, eh?
Yes, yes.
So thanks everybody. Lawrence, it's nice